And welcome everybody to another episode of the Pulse of Fins Nation. I'm your host, Louis Sung. I did it again, Louis Sung. My name is Louis Sung, and I am joined by Ron Kenneth, and I am joined by Eric Wiedeke, which I said correctly. Got it.
I've never actually heard your last name pronounced. I never bothered to ask.
I always said Wiedeke. And over 2 years, he never corrected me once.
What kind of name is that? What is that from?
It is German in origin.
German, okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, after 2 years, I finally learned how to say it properly. So I'm making a concerted effort to make sure I say it correctly from here on out. It is Eric Wiedeke. It is not Eric Wiedeke. It is not anything along those lines. So please welcome Eric Wiedeke to the show for the first time, technically speaking. I don't know who that Eric Wiedeke guy was, but we got rid of him.
I hope you're better than that Eric Wiedeke guy. That guy's takes are crap. No, I was kidding.
I know, right? I'm telling you.
I know it was awful. I don't know how I could have ever had him on my show. Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna talk about this situation right now. The Miami Dolphins obviously are going to be without Tua Tagovailoa for an extended period of time. He will be eligible to return on Week 8 versus the Indianapolis Colts. I believe that's what it was, right?
That's what I saw.
Cardinals.
Even though I thought
the Cardinals. Okay, my bad.
But they are 4 weeks.
Week 7 in
so.
Indy.
Yeah.
Okay, Week 7 is Indy.
I
Got
did
it.
see
I thought IR was 4 weeks. It's 4 games, including buys.
Oh, do we have a bye coming up?
We will
Week
in that
6
time
is a
span
bye.
that Tua is going to be on the IR.
That's why it's Week 8, but it's our 7th game. All right, that all makes sense then.
Yeah. So we will not have Tua until Week 8, which means that Mike McDaniel has to find a way to win with the next 4 games with either Skylar Thompson or Tyler Huntley. And my father, greetings. Hello to you too, father
Mr.
of mine.
Sung Senior, sir.
Yep. So I don't know how he's going to do it. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, I have a bone to pick with Mike McDaniel, and I'm going to give my reasons as to why.
When you're done, I'll go, but you go first.
Yeah, Eric said we got it out while we were at work. I'm like, I didn't get mine out. I'm still mad. I'm still mad.
You have to get it out on the show.
It has to happen on the show, and then I'll write it, and then I'll finish the column I'm writing about it too, just so that everybody can read what I have to say too. Like I am going to harp on this until I see something change. So with that being said, let's go ahead and mention our sponsors for this show. First of all, we do have jerseys305.com.
Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've got a great new sponsor that fits with us perfectly. It's called jerseys305.com. That's jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Their mission was born from a passion for wearing jerseys of the old styles and the past players. Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. And Jerseys 305 was created by the fans, for the fans. They're diehards just like you. In fact, they're probably listening to this episode right now. So check them out, Jerseys 305, their partnership with 5 Reasons Sports, celebrating with a 10% discount on the next purchase using the code 5 at checkout. Unlock your exclusive savings on the entire vintage collection.
And again, that is jerseys305.com. Use that promo code 5, and you can go ahead and get 10% off your next order. And we are also going to go ahead and mention our newest sponsor, the line to pick a bone with McDaniel. I don't know what that line is. I think it might
if
you can get
he doesn't mean a line you cross. He means get in line.
Get in line. When he said there's a line, I'm like, is there a direct line to Mike McDaniel that I can tell him to?
I read it the same way. Like there's a line that you don't cross. I was like, no. I think he
no. That's not what I meant.
He took it as like a hotline.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, funny. Hello, Mike McDaniel's office. I'm like, you. Okay. Before we go ahead and continue, just want to go ahead and mention, of course, we have our other sponsors. What? Other sponsor.
I was gonna say, have you tried turning?
I'm not turning the page, sir. No, I'm not doing that. No,
I was gonna say something, and it was gonna be a real banger of a joke, and then you just killed the timing of it.
Nah, the real estate shop. Let's go ahead and take a listen. As soon as I get it up and running.
The Final Yard is sponsored for the entire 2024 Dolphins season by The Real Estate Shop. Before you make a final decision about who should be your real estate broker, make sure you reach out to Amanda Martin and Javier Iglesias, the dynamic duo leading The Real Estate Shop, which combines market expertise with a passion for community and personalized service. They offer honest and professional real estate services, guiding buyers and sellers with integrity and a client-first approach. From pricing to negotiation, they ensure every step is smart and transparent. They operate in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. They understand the local markets like no one else. Their deep knowledge of these areas helps clients navigate the complicated nuances of home ownership in South Florida. So reach out to them. Again, it's The Real Estate Shop. You can find them on Instagram at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. That's 954-268-9812. Before you make a final decision about real estate, reach out to The Real Estate Shop.
All righty. So let's go ahead and let's get into this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a point here. And this is the point that this is my issue with Mike McDaniel right now. The question of the show is there still hope for the Miami Dolphins season? The answer is yes. Straight up, yes. Of course there is hope for the season. There is talent on this team beyond Tua Tagovailoa. In the brief time that he was out back in 2022, we were looking at the Miami Dolphins offense, and there was some semblance of an offense when Skylar Thompson went up to Minnesota and was the starter, and things were moving. They weren't great, but they were moving. I think there was some level of actual ability being shown there. And then he got hurt, and Teddy Bridgewater had to come in at the last minute, and then things just went south from there. So that's my biggest issue right now with the Dolphins. If you can just get your backup quarterback to be the guy the entire game, and you don't have to switch quarterbacks halfway through the game, I think that Mike McDaniel can pull it off. Maybe, just maybe, against a team, like a team against the Seahawks. The Seahawks are, as Eric pointed out, they are not good. They are not good. Like he mentioned to me while we were at work.
They're not good and also favored by 5.5.
Right, but they're in Seattle. Of course, they're going to be favored. That makes sense. But
I bet you they wouldn't be favored.
Well, wait a second. I don't want to be. Wait a second. I don't want to be that guy. I said they are really bad against the run.
Well, okay, they're really bad against
otherwise.
Okay, they're really bad against the run. And right now we have Devon Achane, who seems to be the only guy who seems to be getting any level of snap counts. And this is where I get my biggest frustration here, folks. So I mentioned this on the post-game show, and I had people absolutely rip me to shreds over this. But I'm right. I don't care what anybody says. I'm right. Eric Spoelstra of the Miami Heat, he is known for many things that he does amazingly. And in basketball, one of the things he is known for, and it is a positive in his case, is he handles load management very well. But again, basketball is a different sport than football. And Mike McDaniel spent so much time with Spoelstra, learned many good things, how to make a culture, all these things, etc. That's all fine and good. But one lesson that Mike McDaniel seems to have taken from Eric Spoelstra is this concept of load management. And I got news for him. It doesn't work in football. It does not work in football. In the NFL, if you are one of the best players in the league, and in our case, we have Tyreek Hill, who by his peers has literally been voted the best player in the league, even better than the Chiefs superstar quarterback who's probably going to win the next 5 Super Bowls because all he has to do is close his eyes and he will find the end zone somehow because it's like massively just magnetic to whatever it is that he has to do. So my biggest issue, Mike McDaniel has learned the wrong lesson from Eric Spoelstra. Load management is not a thing in the NFL. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read you guys some numbers here. And I want to go, and I really want to highlight this because it just shows the difference in the mentality of what it is that these really good teams with really good players do and what these other teams like Miami are not doing very well right now. So I'm going to go ahead and ignore the fact that the Eagles lost last night, okay? I'm just going to be dead straight about that. Forget the fact that they lost last night, that everything is an aberration.
That was McDaniel's fault anyways.
I want to go ahead and I point this out. So you have your best players. If you think about players that are really good on the Philadelphia Eagles, I'll ask you, Ron, who is really good on the Eagles offense? Like the best players they've got.
A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley.
Okay. In week 1, Saquon Barkley played 80% of the snaps. 80% of the snaps, okay? Devonta Smith played 100% of the snaps. 100. He did not play. There was not a single down played on offense that Devonta Smith was not on the field, okay? And then you have A.J. Brown, 95% of the snaps. So he only missed 4 plays the entire time the Eagles offense was on the field. Week 2, just now, we just witnessed week 2. Saquon Barkley was on the field 90% of the plays. He is almost always there. And do you know what Devonta Smith did? 100% again. This is the guy, as I remind people, this is the dude we were making fun of for being a skeleton with skin on it, and there was no way he was going to be able to survive the NFL. Turns out he's apparently more durable than the guy we ended up picking, according to Mike McDaniel. So we have Devonta Smith doing 2 weeks in a row, 100% of the snaps. A.J. Brown didn't play, so that's regardless of the point. So we have instead Jahan Dotson, who plays 79% of the snaps. Dotson is wide receiver 3 for them. So he just moved up 1, and he got the majority of the snaps instead. I'll go ahead and I'll leave the Eagles alone for now. Now I want to go ahead and highlight the next team. So we have the wide receiver room for the Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson played 84% of the snaps. Not as much as what the Eagles do, but still the majority of the time, Jefferson was on the field. And then in week 2, he ended up playing only 70%, but the problem was that he was injured, and so that ended up taking him out for a while. Let's keep going down the list, though. The New York Jets. We have Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, week 1, 96% of the snaps. Week 2, Garrett Wilson, 96% of the snaps again. And you can even point out, even though he's not particularly great, you do have Alan Lazard, who got 100% of the snaps week 1. He played 82% of the snaps in week 2. Okay, fine. How about I'm not even saying they're a good team, but I'm pointing out something. Your best players, Terry McLaurin, Washington Commanders, week 1, 81% of the snaps.
Sorry.
81% of the snaps for Terry McLaurin in week 1, 92 in week 2. So he was playing most of the time. Let's have a team that does have a lot of weapons and they have to spread the ball around. Okay, let's talk about this. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jalen McMillan played 83% of the snaps week 1, 79 week 2. Chris Godwin, 78, 79%. Mike Evans, 70. Okay, that's the low number. 79 in week 2.
Mike Evans is also like in what year, 12 or something?
Yeah, I mean, he's an older guy, but he's still out there a lot.
Are we going to get to the Miami ones yet?
We will, but I have one more for you. I have one more for you. I have one more. The Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 98% of the snaps week 1, 92 in week 2, 93% of the snaps. And his number 2 receiver.
That's why they lost. They went down 6%.
Number 2 receiver, Jameson Williams, 85% of the snaps, 92% of the snaps. Now we finally get to the Miami Dolphins. And this is where my biggest issue with Mike McDaniel and his load management stuff, it needs to stop. You have one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. You have 2 of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. Do you know what the snap count is for these 2 highly paid NFL players who are supposed to be the crux of this whole offense?
What is it?
Jalen Waddle played 72% of the snaps.
Does that include
1.
where he was pretty much sitting in a lot of the fourth quarter?
I don't know about that, man. Week 1. I'm talking about week 1. Week 1. Right. They didn't bench him in week 2. Week 1, 72% of the snaps.
Yeah.
And Tyreek Hill, 70.
Yeah.
70%.
I don't agree with it either.
For Tyreek, he's the best player on the team, and he's 30% of the time he's not even there.
Yeah, I agree with you. He should be on.
Yeah, but look at quickly look at the percentage of plays that were in 22 personnel, which is right now their best personnel grouping. One of those guys has to leave the field. That's part of the reason.
Okay, one of, not both. which it seems like that's most of the time. The biggest mistakes, and by the way, we welcome Alfredo Arteaga to the show. The biggest mistakes that happened against Buffalo last week, besides the fact that Tua banged his head against Damar Hamlin's shoulder pads, the biggest mistakes that happened that whole game, at least two of them. I didn't rewatch the game, but where was Tyreek and where was Waddle? They weren't there. The first interception that happened, you had Grant Dubois, Robbie Chosen, and Braxton Berrios on a crucial third down, and you have these, like, literally Dubois got there that week. Why are you throwing him in that position? Like, you couldn't find anybody else to play that one snap? Nobody, huh?
I feel like the only other one they could have is Eazy-E, and they haven't been bringing him up, and it must be because he's hurt. And of course, we don't know that because he's practice squad, so they don't have to designate his.
I will
squad.
say about that, it does feel like a good sign for him and his chances to be called up from the practice squad that Robbie Chosen was cut today from the practice squad. Not to say one thing is related to the other, but it does seem like a maybe a slight indication there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Unless they're planning on trying to find somebody else and throw.
Or Malik Washington's ready to go.
Or one or the other. Yeah, you're right. That is a good sign. I'd like to see both Malik come back and we need better than what's been out there.
But you can understand where my point is, though, right? Because I'm looking at it.
Lewis, I don't think we can. I can't argue with it. I don't know how Eric feels. I'm not going to argue with it. I get what Alpha's saying about the personnel, but man, you need your best players on the field.
Your best players
most of the time
need to be out there. They're like, regardless of the personnel groupings, I understand the philosophy, but you have to find a way to get your top guys out there, because if you aren't, what exactly is the plan? Are you just trying to make sure that you have your best wide receivers just out there on blocking? You're gonna have Dubois, and you're gonna have this guy block and this guy block, and then you hope for a screen, and then you just hope that Achane can run 20 yards down the field with everybody just clearing the way.
Question, and if you have to take some time to look it up, maybe Eric or Alf can talk. Can you look up San Fran's numbers in week?
No, I already did that. Ayuk and Debo dwarf, because the thing is, this year is actually a high number for Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. If you go back to last season, Tyreek was 63% of the snaps in 2023. Jalen Waddle was 55% of the snaps in 2023. Now, granted, that's not to say it's everything. I will say it's interesting that they have to go into 22 personnel as much as they do, because maybe the fact that they have to rely on two tight end sets has something to do with the way that the offensive line is built. That might be perhaps an indication there. Obviously, it gives them some success.
It has something to do with the fact that we only truly have two receivers right now, and the rest are almost practice squad guys.
Okay, but they would be better and they would be able to contribute more if you had Tyreek and Waddle on the field with them to open the way for everything else. That's the main mentality here. If you want these other guys to contribute, you need to at least send a decoy. Braxton Berrios is not wide receiver 1 material. He's barely wide receiver 3 material. I don't know what Grant Dubois can do. He just got here. And there are a lot of Green Bay Packers fans that like him. I understand that. Ron is too quiet. Ron, you need to crank up your mic, apparently.
Crank up the mic. How's that? Any better, guys? Better. There we go.
We'll work on it. But that's basically been my main point. And to Eric's point, I did just look up the 49ers as well. And as far as the 49ers are concerned, their numbers are a lot different right now. Like in week 1, okay, I'll grant you they look more like Miami's. Brandon Ayuk only played 60% of the snaps. Debo played
go back to 2023, because 2 weeks in 2024 is not a.
But we're starting things off. And I get what you're talking about. Ayuk played a big majority of the snaps in 2023 and Debo. I get it. But I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about right this second, because Mike McDaniel's this is his 3rd season. He's had time to learn, to evolve, and I'm not calling him out and saying that he needs to be fired or anything along those lines. I'm not going that far. I'm not. He's still the best coach we've had in a very long time in Miami. But I am of the mindset in the NFL, your best players need to play. You cannot leave the number 1 rated NFL player in the league by his peers, Tyreek Hill, and you cannot have him sitting almost half the game. That is unacceptable. Like, why are you paying him $30 million a year to warm the bench and only come in every other play? That's insane. That is utterly insane. and he needs to snap out of it. So, Ron, I know I've already taken up most of the show, but I'm going to go ahead and let you go next.
All right, now I get to my complaint. I think you guys know this because you kind of almost made fun of me and said I was talking about it way too much. I complained about our QB2 issue all summer and all training camp, that it was poor. It wasn't good enough. We were taking too much chance. Yes, Tua survived a year before, but anything could happen, and these guys weren't good enough. I agree with what Alf said in OnlyFans, $3 a month. You've got what's the link for OnlyFans, Lewis? You got it memorized.
That would be discord.gg/onlyfins. Okay. You can go ahead and you can go there, and for $3 a month, best Dolphins talk on the internet.
That Huntley should have already been in training camp, honestly, to begin with. He should have been, or at least at the beginning of the season, we should have gotten and nabbed him. This team got cocky. The GM got cocky, McDaniel got cocky, and Tua got cocky that he stayed healthy a year. Skylar Thompson was never good enough to be QB2, and neither was Mike White, and they needed to upgrade that during the summer when they could clearly see how poorly it was going with both those guys. Big miss there, because you may now you're going to go face a Seattle team that isn't the greatest. They're okay. And you should be going in there even with your backup QB with all the talent we have, considering it a very winnable game. I mean, Seattle's favored by 5.5. I know you said, home field advantage. Well, home field advantage only gets you so far. Miami's a more talented team. It's because of the quarterback situation. That is the reason why Miami is our 5.5-point dogs, simply because of the quarterback situation, the drop-off. And I had said that I felt Skylar Thompson was, if every team had 2 QBs rostered, and that's a total of 64, if I had that math correct, that I felt like Skylar Thompson was probably in the 60s somewhere. And now, as we pull off a practice squad guy that for now we say is going to be backing up Skylar, but let's be honest, when it all goes poorly, eventually I think Huntley's going to have to get in there. Maybe Skylar Thompson isn't even in the top 64. Like, Skylar Thompson is a practice squad QB, case closed. He shouldn't be starting games. I understand he had the good drive and a half against Minnesota, got hurt. He's had one win for us. It was 11 points they scored against the Jets. And we all know what the Jets were like that year with Zach Wilson. It was really poor planning by Miami, by the GM, Greer, and by McDaniel. It really was. And now it's done now. It's over. I'm not getting into it anymore. I just want to say it because I don't want to hammer on this either. I really think Skylar Thompson is extremely bad, but I don't want to spend the whole show just saying Skylar Thompson's really bad because I could spend the whole show doing that. Let's just see what happens. We got to move forward from here, but I think some of how we fix this, Lewis, is some of what you're saying. We need our best players on the field as much as possible. Personnel groupings be damned.
Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I've been right there on that same train overall as far as personnel groupings. As I said it in post game on Thursday night in the midst of my rant. It doesn't help that at the moment your 2 best players offensively are part timers in this offense, and they have been since last year. Not again, and I don't want to say that's Mike McDaniel's offense. I don't believe it's a load management thing or he's trying to preserve them. I think that's literally just how he runs his offense. I think that's his philosophy offensively. The
Patriots used to do the same thing with Brady in their heyday. Even they would mix in a lot of different personnel groupings, and even their best players did not spend 95% of the snaps. No player on offense spent that kind of snap. So it's not the most unusual.
I don't know. In those years where they had the 2 elite tight ends, Rob Gronkowski and the other one, those guys were on the field a lot.
Yeah, I mean, not that they're not on the field a lot, but we're talking about 90. We're naming teams that are putting guys out 100% of the snaps. I mean, that is the extreme number. I don't want to sit here and go through all 32 teams. I'm just not going to.
No, of course.
I'm not going to dog McDaniel for his philosophy. I will dog him, however, for even before Tua got hurt, this offense has looked not right so far. It just has something about it is off, and I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to. Teams started taking away that first read, quote unquote, and it's not because Tua is a first read quarterback. It's just how they like to do it. They like to get the ball out quick, get it to the first read. They like to set that up. That's the prime target. 99.9% of teams are trying to get to their first read. Oh, sorry, 100% of offenses. That's why it's called the first read. If every single QB in the league could throw to the first read every single time, every play, they would. It's not because Tua can't, but they saw some of the things that teams were trying to do to take away that first read and take away what they wanted to do. So Miami decided, you know what, we're going to have to bring these guys up with these screen passes and these short passes. We're going to have to get them to come up, and if not, we're going to just run the ball. The problem is those screen passes haven't been as effective because some of their two best or their best blocking tight ends and the guys that they wanted to go and do that are hurt right now. Or I should say wide receivers. That's part of it. Mostert looked shaky that first game. He didn't look like he was as quick as he'd been, so that's part of it. And they haven't been running the ball as well. I mean, not as well as we'd like, so that's part of it. So it's never really been able to manifest where they could get past this. They could get the defense to cheat up. Like they're not cheating up. They're taking away Waddle and Tyreek, but it makes it worse when you take them off the field on top of it. It makes it worse, not better, in my opinion. So I don't know. It just looks shaky, but now we're not really going to be able to see how we would have worked through that because I do believe we would have worked through that and McDaniel would have figured it out because now we have Skylar Thompson, and pretty much he has to play – McDaniel has to call a scared game the entire time. Skylar Thompson, that's why I don't like him. That's why I don't think he should be in there. He has to play a scared game now. He's to call a scared game, so who knows what that's going to look like. Honestly, it could lead to Tyreek and Waddle being on the field even less, Lewis, because they're just not as valuable with Skylar Thompson on the field, in my opinion.
I think it makes them even more valuable.
Well,
If
you're throwing wide receiver screens to Grant DuBose, oh my God, please, God help us. I would hope those are the guys receiving the wide receiver screens if you're going to be throwing them all game long. But getting away from that, I think to your point, Ron, one thing that I've noticed is I haven't seen a lot of the bread and butter concepts of the offense in week 1 and week 2. Those deep in routes, the dig.
Yeah, all that stuff. What the scissor
now,
concepts
granted,
and the crosses.
Yeah,
all that really hasn't been there. Not that I've seen anyway, or they're not hitting
right.
Them,
And maybe that's just in anticipation. Maybe they think that they're going to zig when the rest of the league is zagging, and that hasn't exactly come. They've kind of tried to throw a counterpunch without, seeing if defenses have really done much to adjust to them. I also think that there's something to the idea when it comes to the Dolphins here and their offense in 2022 and 2023. Teams knew what they were going to do. Mike McDaniel's offense last year was not this mystery that nobody had seen before. It was successful. Number one, because yes, Mike McDaniel did make a few adjustments and he did absolutely make tweaks. But at the same time, because the Dolphins were just so much more talented that they were going to execute in their scheme, regardless of what you wanted to do, because your guys were not good enough to stop Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Tua Tagovailoa when he's on. That's I think a lot of the crux of what it is, hey, listen, you might know what's coming, okay, but you're still not going to be able to stop it. And there are a handful of teams in the league that gave them issues. Absolutely, I will 100% cede that. But against the vast majority of teams in the NFL, they're just not equipped to defend that. Point blank, period. No matter what kind of concepts they try to go into. Their personnel just doesn't account for it. And I think that they've tried to kind of reinvent the wheel here a little bit. I want to see them go back to a little bit of the core concepts in the offense. I understand that they wanted to get away from maybe relying on Tyreek Hill as much as they did last year and being so heliocentric around him. I know
exactly why they were doing what they were doing. The second we saw it in Jacksonville and then we started to see it again, I knew exactly why they were doing it. It's just not working for whatever reason. And maybe it's a good time to ask Alf why he thinks what they're trying to do, Alf, right now with this little adjustment in the offense, whatever it is that they cooked up in the offseason, that just doesn't seem like even before Tua was hurt, it's working. I don't know if Al's with us. I see that he's muted.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay. It just doesn't seem like it's working, and I do want your opinion because I know you watch you watch film. Why do you think it's not working? Because clearly in the first, say, 6 quarters, it really wasn't.
Well, I would not put in the first 2 quarters against Buffalo because I think it was working against Buffalo in the first 2 quarters, especially their new running game. They revamped the running game, and it wasn't working against the Jaguars to start the game because a lot of those new concepts were still based on some timing, and they were just not timed up. The running backs were not timed up with the tight ends not with the offensive line, and they couldn't get that going. So they relied more on their passing game to get them in that game and to win it, okay? Until they just ran very, very basic runs toward the end of the game against Jacksonville. Against Buffalo, you got to understand who you're playing against. The Bills will not get out of their 4-2-5 defense. They will not take Teron Johnson when he's healthy, and in this case, Cam Lewis off the field under any circumstances. So what you want to do against that is you want to isolate Cam Lewis in the run game, and the way you do that is by sticking with 22 personnel. Now, the problem with that is, fine, they're not going to get out of that defense, so you're going to keep running it at them in 22 personnel. But when you do throw it, they're still in that nickel. So what is the personnel grouping you're going to bring in to throw it against that grouping? If you bring in 21 personnel, your tight end has to be able to beat the safety on the inside or a linebacker into the flat. Which tight end are you going to play? You're not going to play Jonnu Smith in 21 personnel. So you're going to play some type of variation on your personnel groupings to try to get your best pass catchers out there. They were caught with their pants down a couple of times. One of those times was when they ran a deep route. They ran a deep route with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's gassed. He asked out of the game, and now all of a sudden it's 3rd and 13. Okay? Now, against the Bills, they had a really good game plan as far as running the football in 22 personnel against Cam Lewis. And you could see it in the film. The Bills did absolutely nothing special in that game. Nothing special. Their scheme was more vanilla than usual against Miami. And I could take you through the interceptions. We know the third one. The third one was just, a brain dead play that Tua made worse by fading away. He needed to step up and either deliver it on the safety valve to Jeff Wilson or just throw it away right away. Because he could see that the pressure was already, he could see color on the inside immediately. So he knew that the play was dead already. Fading away to throw it away is probably the worst thing he could have done. But I'll take you through the first 2 interceptions. The first interception to Dubose, he has an opportunity on this play, okay, where there's 3 plays to be made against that defense on that play, okay, which is like a 4-by-2 cover 6, but it's really like cover 2. He has the whole shot up top, okay, which he can try, but that's not where his read was dictating. His read was going more left to right, okay. He tries one of the most ambitious throws that I've seen him make in maybe 2 years here, and he delivered. The only problem was his ball placement was off by 6 inches, maybe to a foot, and he missed inside. It goes off of a shoulder pad. It gets intercepted. The only other alternative on that play was to throw the seam to Jonnu Smith, but he wasn't going to. I mean, the seam to Robbie Chosen on that play, but he wasn't going to do that because he's never done that. He doesn't like throwing the seam against cover 2. He's been taught since very early on in his playing career in Alabama that cover 2 squeezes the hashes, so you're not going to complete that pass unless you could get them really, really wide, which they have before, and even against Buffalo. You remember in 2022 when he hit that deep post, that was because they were committed to stopping guys on the outside like Tyreek Hill. On that play, he tried a really ambitious pass, and he almost got it, but it goes off a shoulder pad, intercepted. The other pass to Robbie Chosen, he has an escort pass out there on the flat to Achane with Ingold out in front. He completes that. They got 5 blockers for 4 defenders on one side of the field. Achane might even score. That's just a bad decision by the quarterback. So if you take that whole game into totality, you look at it and you just say, okay, the 10 points, they weren't good enough. But they were good enough to get into position to score in that game and to be competitive. But you cannot be going for it. Part of it is also their philosophy in some of this. I thought that the defense was fine against the Bills. You mean to tell me that Josh Allen had 132 yards passing and 2 yards rushing and you lose? He even had a fumble, by the way, that we didn't recover. So, that's on your offense that can't stay on schedule and keeps putting your defense in a bind. They started 5 drives inside Miami territory. How is that possible? You know how many points they scored on those 5 drives? 10.
Yeah, that was impressive by the defense. They kept holding them, even though we kept giving them the ball inside of Miami.
So the defense was fine. So
territory.
this was all a turnover issue, and it was really a quarterbacking issue to go with the wide receiver issue. Now, going forward, I understand a lot of people, woe is me and the season's over or whatever. I actually, before the season started, I predicted that Seahawks would beat Miami. I thought Miami would win the first 2 games and then lose game 3 against Seattle, because Seattle was built and is built to beat the team that Miami was with Tua, a passing team that was essentially going to try to pass rush with a lead, right? They're built to stop the pass. They have a good pass rush, but they have a really good secondary. And their offense is built to play on schedule off of the run game, okay? So I thought that would be a problem. They have serious issues stopping the run. It has to come from somewhere on Mike McDaniel to use the personnel that he has and try to emulate what a guy who used to be in the same staff he was in, Mike LaFleur, and completely revamp the entire offense to be a ball control, run first offense. LaFleur ran it 53 times and threw it only 14 times with Malik Willis. He knew who Malik Willis is and was. Skylar Thompson is essentially a little bit better than Malik Willis, which is not saying much, because Malik Willis is one of the worst quarterbacks in all of football. So it's up to Mike McDaniel to mold this personnel that he has to play a style of offense that's going to be conducive to winning. No turnovers, run the football, and long, sustained drives with a short passing game. That's going to get teams out of the personnel groupings. That's going to give you an opportunity to manufacture shot plays, which is what you couldn't have before. Now you're going to be able to do those things. And this doesn't stop when Tua comes back. When Tua comes back, you have to keep the same system. This is what they wanted to do originally, but they did it in a half-ass way. Against the Jaguars, they got nervous, and they went right back to what they did before. Against the Bills, they started off in the right system. They had the turnovers, and that completely short-circuited their game. Look, they have a few games here until Tua comes back. They could win every single one of them, okay? They can, because they were going to be favored in every single one of them with Tua. But now they're probably not going to be favored in any of them. Maybe one. Maybe the home game against Tennessee. Maybe. But they could absolutely win every single one of these games. And my expectation is that they have to win a majority of these games. If not, I'm going to have questions. And those questions are not going to be about personnel. Those questions are going to be about the coaching and how they adapt talent on this team. Because so far, it's left a lot to be desired. This team, for all intents and purposes, has underachieved. That game was on the quarterback. It was on the play calling, not particularly in that order, but somewhat in that order. And the offensive line was third. And I understand people, the offensive line sucked. The offensive line was not what got Tua blown up and on IR. No. What got Tua blown up and on IR was a hero play where he decided to play with ego and anger and tried to run a guy over. That's what he tried to do.
He was trying to make a statement to spark the team. I get why he did it. It was just
it was just
what I said
stupid.
Before. This whole team, McDaniel, Tua, and Greer, they got cocky, man. He was healthy one year, and they got cocky.
I think the worst thing that happened in that game was that it was 3rd and 10, and he ran for 11 yards on the first down. And he thought, you know what? I could do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to take off the next chance I get. And he had the first down.
Yeah,
you know what he should have done?
By like 3 yards.
Yeah, just slide, you know?
I mean, yeah, but it's like he forgot the entire part of the 11-yard run where he got out of bounds. That was the best part of that play, at least to me personally, was that he got out of bounds without taking the hit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more. We still got 20 minutes to go, but first I want to go ahead and pull this up. We also have another sponsor. It's Underdog Fantasy, and I'm going to go ahead and play the audio for you here.
I'll tell you about Underdog Fantasy. It's the greatest time of year again. Football is back, and it's here to stay till February. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player stats, for example, touchdowns, passing yards, and more. Do what I do and make Mondays and Thursday nights much more interesting. Making picks on Underdogs is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code 3YARDS. That's the number 3 yards. And Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code 3 yards, the number 3 yards, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama, New England, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY to 467-369.
All right, so now I want to go ahead and I want to bring this up because this is something
Who the hell was that was reading that thing so fast, man?
I couldn't imagine. There's actually something. It's actually very serendipitous that you're here because this is something that I've seen some of the discussions that you guys have had on OnlyFans with the folks in there, talking to them one-on-one and talking to them in group chats and everything. We've had Coach Eric Smith on this show a couple of times, and he has brought up that he feels we are unfairly attacking the offensive line, that we are being too hard on them, that there haven't been nearly as bad as we see them. Now, I don't think this is news or anything. You've mentioned in there that you're not a particularly big fan of the O-line as it is right now. So now this is where I'm wondering, because I've always had this issue with when I have two people that I respect their football acumen, I respect their opinions, I respect their film study. And one person says one thing, and then another person says a completely different thing. So I want to know what it is that you're looking at, because while I'm here trashing Eichenberg, Coach Eric Smith is saying that I'm being too hard on Eichenberg. And meanwhile, I see you saying to some folks in the OnlyFans that, yeah, no, you've had enough. So what is it that you're seeing that's different from what Coach Eric is seeing?
I like their tackles. I like their center a lot. I like Aaron Brewer. I think they hit pretty big on Aaron Brewer. I think they might have even gotten an upgrade over Connor Williams, okay, on Aaron Brewer. Now, here's the problem with the tackles, okay? Austin Jackson is just not a very good pass pro offensive tackle. He's actually become a very, very good run blocking offensive tackle. And he's very good in this system with the run actions for the pass game. Teron Armstead is an absolute stud, but in this game, he leaves the game right after Robert Jones left, and now you have two backups coming in essentially cold on a third down when the Bills are going to bring pressure. That's a recipe for disaster, okay? And look, Robert Jones can do certain things in this system. He's more likely than not a right guard. Liam Eichenberg is probably a backup level guard in this league. Lester Cotton is not an NFL offensive lineman, at least not on this team. I don't understand why he's on this team. He came in and he had his own issues. The interior of the offensive line was an absolute disaster in this game. But when I tell you that it did not matter, they could have won this game with their terrible guard play. I really do believe that. But you can't win games when your tackle's just leaving because he has to adjust his harness on his shoulder. And then now you bring in a guy cold off the bench to pass block on third down. Greg Rousseau on third down. Like, that's not fair to Kendall Lamb. That's not fair to even Lester Cotton. I don't like Lester Cotton as a player to just bring them in on third down. Sometimes you just have to give up on some of these play calls. But they're trusting these guys, and I think their trust is unfounded. Now, as far as run blockers, I think that now they're set up in a way, for all the wrong reasons, but they're set up in a way where they're going to be able to use these guys to the best of their ability. And that's as run blockers in a run scheme for outside zone and for a lot of those misdirection runs that they like to run. That's what they're going to be good at. And I don't think, look, last year there were games where they had 5 true pass pro sets. Against Seattle, if they have no pass pro true set, no true pass pro sets, that'd be fine. That'd be fine just by me. That'd be completely perfectly fine by me. But to do that, they got to stay on schedule. You can't fall behind. You start falling behind, you're doomed again. Because you're essentially now a one-dimensional team. Now when Tyler Huntley eventually takes over, and hopefully I'm wrong, but I've seen Skylar Thompson for 2 camps now. He was very good as a rookie, by the way, in camp. But I've seen every single practice he's had the last 2 years in training camp. He's been bad. He's just been bad, period. He was bad in the preseason this year. Okay? So I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that this is a Brock Purdy situation. But if it's not, Tyler Huntley affords you a little bit of more expansion, okay, of your playbook. I was talking on OnlyFans in the veteran room about how quarterbacks are more like menus, and some have bigger menus and the food tastes better in some than others. Skylar Thompson's menu has to be as limited as possible because the things that he does well are not things that are conducive to expanding the entire playbook. They have to reduce things for him.
He's chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. That's the menu, man.
Has to be as basic as possible for Skylar Thompson. With Tyler Huntley, you could do a few more things. I would play Tyler Huntley a little bit more this week, to be honest with you. And to be really honest with you, I think that there's an install that you can run with Tyler Huntley if you have to. Okay? So if you had to start him on Sunday, I think you can. But they're going to have to be really creative, and now it's time for Mike McDaniel to earn some of those stripes. And I talk about this all the time, and yeah, that season ended in complete disaster because they started out 9-2, and then they lost the last 5 games in the season that Dan Marino tore his Achilles. But when Dan Marino tore his Achilles, Don Shula won 5 out of the next 6 to go 9-2 with Scott Mitchell, Doug Peterson, and Steve DeBerk. Those are his quarterbacks. Okay? He used those guys to go 9-2. Oddly enough, when they got healthy, they lost the last 5 in that season. All right? So it's time that Mike McDaniel goes out there and wins some games without Tua Tagovailoa. He's going to have Skylar Thompson as a full-time starter for now. He's 1-1 in actual starts because I don't count the one against the Jets was as unfair as you can make a game. And to be honest with you, Tanner Conner blew that game more than Skylar Thompson did. Because when Tanner Conner dropped that seam pass that would have given them first down inside the 30-yard line with the go-ahead field goal ready to go under 10 minutes. After that pass was dropped is when they completely imploded. Against the Vikings, he got knocked out of the game. All right? Now, he did start against the Jets, and that was an awful game. And they played kind of the style that they're probably going to have to play this Sunday. But we shall see. This is more on Mike McDaniel than it is on anybody else. He has enough talent, more than enough talent, to beat all of these teams coming up here in the near until Tua comes back. He really does, because he was going to be favored in all of those games with Tua.
Yeah. And at least this week, I mean, I kind of touched on it earlier on in the show. This is the game where you run the ball 40 plus times. Because I think it needs to be said, and I don't think that it's been stressed enough, just how bad Seattle's run defense is. When I say Seattle's got a bad run defense, I mean they have a terrible run defense. Last year, they were second worst in the league. This year, they've given up 141 yards on the ground a game to teams quarterbacked by Jacoby Brissett and Bo Nix. And so you can talk about the Dolphins being one-dimensional. I'm still more afraid of Skylar Thompson and with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle than I am of Jacoby Brissett and Bo Nix with the weapons that they have. I just don't think that the difference in talent, maybe give Bo Nix time. We'll see down the road. But to this point, through those first two games, I don't think that the difference there in talent of the quarterback is great enough to overcome the surroundings that they have in terms of what Skylar has to work with and what guys like Brissett and Nix have to work with. So the Dolphins' run game should absolutely be able to keep them in this game by themselves. I want to see a variety in the run game. I understand Devon Achane has given you reasons to give him the ball more, and I understand that if I'm Mike McDaniel, I completely get it. But let's be honest here. The guy is 5'9", 195. I love the games where he gets 20 plus touches because I've got him on a couple fantasy teams. But man, it just feels like that is not a recipe for long-term success with him. Hopefully Raheem Mostert comes back and he's a little bit more like himself going forward, and you can involve Jeff Wilson, you can involve Jalen Wright down the road, kind of keep fresh bodies coming at the Seattle defense, and you can really hold on to the ball because Seattle's got a pretty good offense. Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, those are guys that you absolutely have to account for on that side of the ball. This is a Dolphins team that has to win at least this week on time of possession and just old school, tough, punch you in the mouth football. Run the ball, hold on to it, don't turn the ball over, and play really strong defense. And I think that there's a world in which they do that, and that formula works for them over the next 3 or 4 games, because when you look at the opponents that they play and the quality of those teams, they're not, world beaters by any means, but they're going to have to commit to that. Mike McDaniel is going to have to commit to that. And that's going to be where it's interesting. They gave him the 3-year extension this offseason because he's an offensive genius. And offensive geniuses give you game plans over against the Patriots, against the Titans, against the Seahawks, against the Colts, I'm not saying it's going to be a top 5 offense, but you should be getting enough out of your offense to win each of those games. And if you're not, it really reflects poorly on him and makes us kind of reevaluate if we had what we thought we had in him. If they go 1-3 down this stretch or something catastrophic like that.
All right. Well, what I will point out real quick, Eric, I'm reaching a point where Mike McDaniel, at the very least, was able to offer a top 5 offense. You can even say the best offense in the NFL for the past 2 seasons. That's what Tua. Understand. I get it. But this is the situation right now. If we continue to say, well, maybe we don't have what we thought we had with Mike McDaniel, like at some point we're just going to have to roll with it. There have been years where Mike Tomlin did not have a great season and they stuck around with him, and it's to their benefit. At some point we have somebody who is doing a good thing and has done a good thing, and we just have to stick with the good thing because it happened, and we can't just immediately ignore it as the moment things go south. I don't want to immediately put Mike McDaniel on the hot seat right after he signed an extension because things went sour because the starting quarterback is gone. I understand that. I don't want to do. With that being said, I agree with you that they need to focus on the run game. I do disagree on the one thing. I am not going to look at Devon Achane, and I'm not going to play chicken with him. I am not going to, I want him out there. There's the same philosophy that I have with Tyreek and Waddle. They need to be out there. If Achane is the best running back we've got, and it's not even close, and based on what we saw in Buffalo, he's pretty much the only bright spot that was on the offense the entire game. Like, he was the guy. He was even after the game was already lost, somehow he was still out there just making plays. And we were screaming, why is Achane still in there? I get it. I do. But it only goes to show the only guy who is worth catching the football out there, it was, in fact, Devon Achane. So if he brings something to the offense that guys like Jeff Wilson or even Jalen Wright maybe right now, but maybe later, Devon Achane is a legitimate weapon in this offense, and other teams, they can't seem to find a way to really slow him down so much. They really can't. So just the same way that I look at Tyreek and I look at Waddle and I say that they need to be out there, like, even if it's not, I'm not looking for them to play 100% of the snaps or 95% of the snaps. I get it. I understand gameplay, their style. It mandates that they have to go out there and take a breather every once in a while. But important downs, like 3rd down and 5 or whatever the case may be, they need to be out there. The same goes for Achane. You need him out there. He is the best one you've got, and it's not even close. So unless it's 3rd and 1 and you're going to be handing it off to like a heavy personnel situation with Ingold in front, and then you got Jeff Wilson behind him, and you're just going to slam it into the line of scrimmage, I understand that point. That point becomes group personnel. But if all options are on the table and you're not sure what the best play is, you better darn be sure you have your best guys out there, and that's Achane. So I am not going to act like, oh, the guy's going to end up falling to pieces if he gets 20 touches a game. I want him out there as much as humanly possible because he is he is one of the 3 best weapons that Miami has on this roster, and you cannot afford to let him sit out there because he might get hurt or it might not match the situation.
I completely get that. There's two key differences here. Number one, I trust the depth in the running back room, especially when you have Raheem Mostert healthy, and I believe he will be healthy for Seattle.
Yeah,
I trust the depth in the running back room way more than I trust the depth in the wide receiver room, for one. If you were telling me that we had, Odell healthy and Malik Washington healthy and Eric Ezukama could be on the field, I might feel a little bit different about those snap count situations because I at least trust those guys to make something happen more than the likes of Robbie Chosen and Grant Dubose and Chase Claypool going back to last year, because he's another one of those guys that they've just kind of tried out at that spot. I think you have more depth at the wide receiver position. Number 2 is Devon Achane does have a history of these kinds of things when it comes to getting hurt. Not to say that he's an injury prone player, but he's 5'9", $198. It's just going to happen in the NFL, given enough touches. I'm not saying that you need to go away from him completely. I think 15 to 18 touches a game is absolutely where you should be with him, and that's plenty. I'm not calling for him to get, 8 touches a game. I think you can give him, 14 carries and 5 catches, something along those lines. But you have guys behind him that can get the job done more than you do behind Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill that can get the job done. That's my only point there, especially when combined with his injury history. I do kind of just want to lay something on the table because I had a thought, and maybe this is just recency bias a little bit out of me, but we really were excited about 70 against Denver in 23. But the more I think about it, and I know that we harped against McDaniel for not sticking with the run enough his first year. I don't know. It's tough to say. Obviously, you want to build on things. You want to expand the offense. But when they were just sticking to their core concepts and they were just kind of, going with that and leaning on their guys, at its peak, the offense was a little bit more consistent in 22. I think when you had Tua at the helm, you look at those games against Detroit, you look at that run that he had right after the first concussion of 4 straight games. And I understand that those defenses weren't particularly great, but there were like 4 straight games after that where the offense was just rolling and it was a wagon every single week. And I don't know how much changed from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. That's not really what I do in terms of, I'm not the big film guy, but I do think I almost prefer, if I had to choose a version of McDaniel, I almost prefer V1 a little bit. If you could just mix in a little bit of that, just mix in that Devon Achane with maybe a little bit more what they were doing year 1.
All right. We've reached the point where it's at an hour. We will have more to talk about, I'm sure. There's a lot of stuff that we can get into when pregame comes around. And who knows, maybe we might even do a couple of Fins Nations in between here and now, just to really get some more talk out there. There's so much that we have to deal with right now. Is there hope for the Miami Dolphins season? The answer is yes. That's the short answer, yes.
I just wanted to quickly say a couple things before we go. Number one, what this game against Seattle needs is last year's Mostert. More than it needs anything else, they need last year's Mostert to show up if he does play in this game. Big time, because they're going to have to run the ball and run the ball well, and it can't just be gimmicky. They're going to have to hand the ball off and run the ball inside zone, outside zone, like they had been doing in the past. Lots of outside zone. They're going to have to. That's number one. Number two, fun stat. Gives you some hope as a Dolphins fan and maybe used for a little betting. So far through 2 weeks, 5.5 or more dogs are 9-1 against the spread and 5 outright wins. So little hope since last I saw the spread was 5.5 for Seattle. So
more important stat: the Dolphins are 8-0
Harlan
historically with Kevin Harlan calling the game. And he's calling the game, so they're putting that 8-0 record on the line on Sunday.
There you go. There's a couple things to smile about, maybe.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call it here. Everybody, thank you all so much for joining us. Once again, we have a big thank you to the Real Estate Shop. We have a big thank you to jerseys305.com. And, of course, the new 3 yards per carry sponsor through the audio feed, Underdog Fantasy. We really appreciate having all of these things going on. There's more to talk about. There's more Dolphins content coming out, so make sure that you stay tuned in to the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We have a lot of stuff going on. That's going to be it. We said thank you for everybody in the chat as well. We've got a lot of people who have been talking, having different opinions. So it's always a pleasure to have everybody. We will see you all next week, and hopefully, with all else, in spite of all the no Tua for the next 4 games, hopefully we're coming back on next Tuesday, and we're talking about how the Miami Dolphins defeated the Seattle Seahawks. We will see you all next time.